WordPress Accessibility Day 2023. Is my WordPress site accessible? How to perform accessibility and usability tests with speaker Maria Gabriela Gabby Gansita, UX Manager at Smartmatic. This presentation was recorded September 27th, 2023.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to WordPress Accessibility Day 2023. My name is Amanda Roper, and I'm joining you from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm the Accessibility Program Manager at T. Rowe Price, where I'm responsible for developing and maintaining the accessibility program across our global teams. When I'm not solving for accessibility issues in the world, you can find me screen printing, hiking, or in an art museum with one of my vintage cameras by my side. I'm so excited to introduce this next speaker for you. Where Gabby Gansita is here to talk about, is my WordPress site accessible? How to perform accessibility and usability tests. Gabby, as a compassionate and dedicated UX designer and manager with over 13 years of experience in the tech world, Gabby has spent the last 7 years honing her skills in UX design, accessibility, and team management. Gabby is passionate about creating user-centric experiences that are accessible to all and striving for excellence in making the digital world a more inclusive place for people with and without disabilities. Please feel free to add your questions in the Zoom Q&A section, and we will answer them at the end of the session, and also use the chat to connect with other attendees. Gabby, the virtual floor is all yours.
Amanda, thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, guys. Let me start, of course, by sharing my screen so that we can start our session today. I am so excited to be here. This is the result of a lot of work from a wonderful community. So I am really thankful and I am happy that I get to be here today. A little bit about me, complementing what Amanda said. I am from Táchira, that is in Venezuela. I have a dog named Luis Ramon. And the reason why I mention this is because, of course, I love him very much, but he might want to make an appearance with a couple of barks in the background. So if you hear him, you know what's happening. I am a computer science engineer. I started my career as a developer, and then I moved to quality assurance. And then I fell in love with usability and accessibility. So today I am a UX manager. The industry experience that I have is related to financial services, an electoral system and software that makes that my customer base, the users of the things that we in the team create, is pretty much everyone. And that is what has allowed me to focus on a diverse audience. So accessibility has become part of my work and also my life. I want to take you through these 7 points that I want to share. They seem like a lot, but I'm sure we're going to have a great session together. First, I want to talk about the universal need for accessible websites, why we do what we do. Then I want to mention, when to go beyond guidelines. So comparing guidelines versus realities. An overview of usability testing, then planning, conducting, and analyzing the results. In here, I'm going to share with you some of the tips that I have about it. Oopsie. Then I'm going to talk about why this is so important to do as a community, to do it together. I'm going to share some final thoughts, some resources, and of course, the quality. See, I am a quality assurance engineer at heart. The questions and answers at the end. So let's start. Why to do to build WordPress sites and everything basically accessible? The universal need for accessibility. If you ask me, my first question, my first thought is because it's the right thing to do, right? But I am passionate about this. So when I get myself involved in all my emotions and the love that I have for this, I remind myself, let's go to facts. Let's ground some awareness with facts. So I am listing here some for you. First, there's 1 billion of people living with disabilities. And 1 billion is a number that we cannot ignore. This means that 15 to 20% of the people that live in the world live with a disability. So 1 million for me means a call to action, that we have to take action in this. Then we have the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. In here, accessibility is not presented as a luxury or as something that would be nice. It's presented as a human right. Now, the web as lifeline. I think we are living every day more and more in a world where the internet, the connection, and the web is going from being a luxury, something that I might or might not use, into something essential. The way we learn, the way we shop, the way we connect, we build, a community, how we access healthcare even is going to the web. So it's a necessity. It's something essential in people's lives, in everyone's lives. I say that the importance of accessibility goes for all ages and stages, and from temporary to permanent. If we are lucky enough to grow old, our senses will start to work differently. And I am very sure, whoopsie again, that my mouse or my keyboard are playing a trick on me. I think that our future selves will be really thankful that today we are building accessible WordPress sites. And also, this is not only about permanent disabilities, but things that happen every day, and even situations, right? The typical example of somebody carrying a kid or a broken knee. These things also need and benefit from accessible websites. And finally, it's good for business. When we create an accessible WordPress site, we are creating a site that is good, that works well, and that, of course, helps you expand reach. So I say that this is not only good for society and for, because it's the right thing to do, it also improves your presence on the web. Guidelines versus realities, when and why to go beyond. Guidelines for me are my starting point. Of the web content accessibility guidelines, I always say that is a link that you have to have as a favorite or as a home in your browser. That is our first help. That is where we learn the solid ground of everything related to accessibility. These and other guidelines have helped us and the iterations even adapt to the new necessities of the web. But then I believe there are things it's too hard to include in a list or in paper all the diversity and all the spectrum of humanity. And that is why I believe that there is a gap between what guidelines do for us, don't get me wrong, which is a lot, but what happens outside. And I have an example of my life that I always like to share. I am sharing on the right side of the slide a picture of a parking space for people with disabilities. I took this picture a while ago. Some years ago, I went through a knee surgery, and this made that I had to walk with support for 3 to 4 months. And when I was able to drive again, still needing the support to walk, I was assigned, of course, with the parking space for people with disabilities in the building where I work. This is back in Panama, where I live there, when I lived there. And I'll try to describe the parking space. It has, let's call on the right side, it has a wall. It has another little wall in the front. And on the left side, there are 2 columns. So when you think of this parking space, it follows all the guidelines. It has the right color. The signal is okay. It's blue. It has yellow. There's the icon that we all recognize. So it is good. Also, I can tell you, in that building, you know, in according to the regulations, you have to have an amount of this type of parking spaces according to the people in the building. This was also correct. Then I went to use it. I have to park my car with the co-pilot door facing the what we call the right wall. Then the front facing this little wall here. I got out of my car and I have to find a way to walk. You know, when you walk with support, you take a little bit more space than the one you usually do. So I had to find my way to work this little aisle that was created between the front of my car and the wall, then go over a step, and then finally get to the elevators. The other option was to open the door of my car and walk a really long distance to be able to come to the elevators. So what's the gap? I am sure that the people that designed and built this parking space were following guidelines. They were making sure that the things on the paper, the requirement, was compliant with what they did. But I am also sure that even if they had the best intentions on their hearts, they didn't talk to the people that would actually use this type of parking spaces. After the second date, I decided to stop using this spot. I went back to my regular spot, and it actually was easier to use, which is pretty, you know, it's a tough reality to accept. So for me, usability testing is the missing piece between the guidelines and the real world. That is a way that we can talk to the people that would actually use what we are creating and get their help, their insights, and just, you know, create something that is not only better, but that actually solves what people need. I think that going beyond guidelines means that we can use the power of humanity, of human connection, of a conversation, learn and improve what we are building to make it accessible and really useful. What are usability testings? What is usability testing? A usability test, I would like to say, and this is something that I honestly think, that it's a conversation where you listen a lot, observe a lot, and learn and grow. I am leaning on the right side of the slide. I'm leaning on a diagram that I think reflects very good and in a very easy way what it means. You have a facilitator that most likely, if you're building the WordPress site, most likely you're going to do it. I will give you then suggestions about the facilitator. You have a participant, and you have tasks that are performed on your WordPress site. While the participant is performing those tasks, you are observing and learning about it. And the participant starts giving feedback. This feedback can be verbal, can be expressions, can be nonverbal. Why do they matter? I always start saying to the people that I work with, you guys know too much, you're too smart, and you're too familiar with what you're building. And this is normal. And this is great that we actually care so much about what we do. But when you become too close to something, it is very hard to start, you know, looking for these missing pieces or the gaps between the guidelines and the real world. So that is why you have to call a friend for help. And that is why I am presenting to do usability tests in these cases. Another thing is, I can share with you guys, I've been in meeting rooms with a lot of really smart, talented, beautiful people that we have our best intentions at heart. And sometimes we forget about this and we start guessing and we go to a spiral of thoughts, out of the best of our hearts, but we start assuming, guessing, presenting ideas, and then we remember, stop, we are guessing. So there's a famous phrase that is, when you are not checking, you are guessing. Don't guess, check. Go to your users. When I start an effort, the first question that I ask is, how fast can I talk to the people that would actually use this? And plan and start planning your usability tests. Now, this is something that might sound really maybe complex. What if I am a shy person? I don't have the tools. I don't have the budget. I guarantee this is easier than you think. Just start with your first usability test. I'm going to give you some tips right now. But this is something that when, like most things in life, when you practice, you get better. So let's plan your first usability test. I want to do a disclaimer here. I don't think there's only one way to do usability test. I don't think there's one framework that fits all the needs. This is a proposal that I am deciding to share with you as a first draft. You can take this and start and adopt and adapt the things that better work for you and iterate, make it yours. This is something for you to grab it and make it yours. The first thing that I suggest is to define your objectives. What do you want to learn? Do you want to learn about assistive technology? Do you want to learn about the keyboard navigation on your WordPress site? Do you want to test with screen readers? What do you want to learn? That will help you set your objectives and have that clear goal. I also always suggest to write it down. It's easier when you can, all the time have that as a north of what you're doing. Choose your testing method. I mentioned this because I used to think that, in-person test was the way to go all the time. And then we have the pandemic, and we have to go out and start. We were lucky enough that we continue to be able to work and to do usability tests remotely. So if you want to start by doing a remote test, there are many tools now, such as this one, where we can share our screen, record the session, turn the camera on. So it's another option. So you can choose whether to do it in person or remote, and those will be fine. Then as a third step, I suggest to select the participants and let them know you. Selecting the participants might be a tricky one because, again, maybe you are an introvert, or maybe you feel like you don't know people that can help you. And this is why the community is so important. This is a beautiful community. Reach out to the people you know, make connections, post on the blog sites. I need help. Do you know somebody, or can you help me with this test that I want to do? And the reason why I said let them know you is because for me, it always works to call the participant in a previous session to explain how the test is going to be. I mentioned I am from Venezuela. I know, I have an accent. Sometimes my English is not the best. So I try to let the participant get to listen to me if they speak English. So it gets comfortable. We can create some rapport. Also, if they have any concern regarding the session, any questions, we can solve those in that introduction call. And then when we get to the actual session of the test, it's going to be great. Now, next, as number 4, choose the right tools. Just make sure that what you want to test in your goal, what you want to learn, is, you are able to get to that with the setting that you have. And if the session is in person in your environment, make sure that the participant has the right tools to perform the test. Prepare the environment, make sure that everything is as real as possible, always taking care of the participant being in a comfortable set. Let's try to always make that a priority, and after that, make sure that you have the lighting that is related to that, or you have the if it is in a desk or if it is standing. So depending of what you're needing to test, I suggest you prepare an environment. Design the scenarios, pick the core task, the most important task from your site, and prioritize the testing of those. Determine metrics. What do you want to measure? Do you want to measure completeness of task? Is important? Is it time sensitive? Do you want to measure time? Do you want to have a qualitative questionnaire at the end? So make sure you know what you want to measure, so that it is clear and you can compare not only between participants, but also between iterations. And of course, plan for feedback. When you do usability tests, you want to be, listening as much as you can to the participants and learning. So at the end, usually the participant would like to expand more, maybe, and share about the overall experience. Because I have this anecdote where the task was really difficult. It was really difficult for the participant, but what the overall system did was so good for them that they were like, look, you have to fix this and this, but the concept is perfect, it's great. I really will use it. So I think that final conversation is very good, and it's a little debrief that you do without losing the momentum. So every idea is fresh for the participant. Now, for conducting the test, I have some best practices that have worked for me in my everyday work. First is to follow a script. And this is because, you can get nervous. Sometimes the participant, can make jokes. You can have something in common, your sports team. And, in my case, I have to admit, it's very easy for me to go through different conversations. So I have a script. I mention this to the participant. I say, I am following a script in case you perceive that I am fixating too much into this, but I just want to make sure that we do the test as best as possible. Stay neutral. Also, try to intervene the least that you can during the test. And in the script, you can help yourself by writing notes, like avoid guiding questions, avoid to mention this, so that you can not interfere in what the participant is doing. Reassure and clarify roles. Every time we talk about testing something, we get a little bit anxious, and it's normal. So just say to the participant, I am here for you. We are not testing you. You are helping me with whatever you find. If we find a problem, it's actually a gift, because now I know something that I didn't know before and I can fix it. So just make sure that they know that this is a really different, nice type of test. Anticipate and handle technical issues. Things can happen and things will happen. I have a quick example. I was prepared with my Bluetooth set, and yesterday they decided to retire, not to work anymore. So I have to turn to this today. So, things happen. So be prepared, make a list. And also the good thing is that when you leave something, you can add it to your plan B. So be always prepared in case the connection fails, or if, something happens, and the participant will be very thankful for this. Encourage expressive feedback. You have, again, we are so different and diverse. There's people that will mention things, give you suggestions, talk all the way through it, or express all the way through it. I suggest that you, just in case, if the participant is not very expressive, remind them in a kind way that they will help you very much. Active note-taking when possible, and if you can record the test. I have here on the right side an example of a practice of a usability test that we were doing. I blurred the system that we were testing, but this is just to show, the quick setup that we can have in a remote test. This is using Teams of Microsoft. And record the test. In that part, I want to mention that you always have to talk to the participant and make sure that there's consent. It's very easy to write down a document where the participant accepts, the recording, and then when you also commit, like let's say, I'm not going to share this recording outside the research team, so this is a nice commitment and to have in these cases. Capture diverse data. Don't look at, the timing of the task and the final comments of the participant, and then, the feedback. If you have a questionnaire, the final feedback, don't look at as separate things, but look at as something together. So don't divide how you analyze, but always keep the big picture present. Be flexible. I mentioned every participant is unique. Sometimes you will have to adapt to some different situation. It's going to be okay. If you have a script, that is going to help you with, being flexible, but keeping the first important guideline next to you. And wrap up with care. Be mindful of the participant's time. Thank them. Compensation is always good. If you have the possibility to have a gift card or to, be a volunteer in something the participant is working or cares about, being thankful, is always something good and appreciated. When analyzing the results, what to look for, I'm sharing a wall with Post-its on it as an image on the right side. Find, when you're testing for accessibility, for me, that's the first thing. Find what are the accessibility insights that you gather from your sessions with your different participants. Also, and why the reason why I use Post-its is because you can find patterns easily. And then you can also see the dimension of each one of those and prioritize using the severity of it, right? If you have a blocker, something that is preventing the participants, the people, the users, for actually completing the most important thing, whether that's a task or getting information or printing something, just make sure that you put that as a priority, and finding those patterns will help you with that. A tricky one, objective versus subjective feedback. It's very easy to get into a conversation, because again, we are building this with the community, and sometimes participants will express things that don't prevent them for doing the task, or is nothing related to the actual accessibility or usability, but about personal preferences. So just be aware that that can happen. It's perfectly fine. It's okay. Your job is to separate which one is which. Be aware of the verbal and non-verbal cues. There are many things that you can do when you have, this mindset of gathering things from every interaction of the participant. Sometimes, and you maybe won't believe this, sometimes you're so focused on everything else that you forget to actually mark if the participant completed the task successfully, right? So I always put this when you're analyzing the result report, including the report, the completion of the task, because it's something that sometimes is so obvious that we missed. The time on the task when analyzing this is something of some of those things that really depends, because you can maybe it's not sensitive, it's not time sensitive. But if you have a pattern of people spending a lot of time in a task, maybe it's not usable, maybe it's too complex. And report it. There's the CIF, the Common Industry Format for reporting usability and accessibility tests. It's great. If you can just write it down, put it in a Post-it, write it in your blog, but report what you found, the severity, and that is like a timestamp on this version of your WordPress site, and then you can compare as you iterate. So I always report it, and you will learn more too. Why is so important for me to have accessibility and usability tests as something in a community? I believe that usability tests, the ones focused on accessibility particularly, creates a partnership that really just sparks in the community. There's a lot of impact in this type of collaboration. First, we humanize tech. We start thinking about technology as something that must be user-centered design. We put the user, the human there as the cornerstone, as the first step of what we do. We learn and grow. Everything you learn with each test that you do will stay with you forever. So by definition, everything that you do from there on is going to be for your, everything that you do is going to be better, and it's going to be stronger, and it's going to be more and more accessible. Maybe for this test that you did, you tested the keyboard navigation, but for the next one, you are able to test something different. So now you have more robust things to include. And this creates an inclusive society. I strongly believe that everything that we do with the community, not necessarily for the community, but with the community, for sure will be of help for everyone that is involved and that is part of that community. Some final thoughts. One test that you do, only one, is better than doing no test at all. If you're, hesitant or nervous, or, you don't know how to start, volunteer as a participant in other people's usability tests. That way you are on the other side and you can take notes on what works for you. And this is a journey. This is not a destination. Enjoy every iteration, enjoy every frustration, enjoy every connection that you make, everything that you learn. Don't see it as a place that you have to get to. See it as something that is improving the way you live your life. Some resources here. There's a great book by Steve Krug. It's called Don't Make Me Think. They have a chapter about how to make usability tests, and it's called something like 10 cents usability test. Is to highlight that you don't need a lot of budget to do this. At the end of every test, I suggest you use some tool. The System Usability Scale is a great tool for measuring usability, and it's a standard, so people will know it. 2 favorites for your browser: Web Accessibility Initiative, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. These are our best friends. I know that when you look for information about usability, accessibility, user experience, it might be overwhelming. So just grab what you need and make it yours. I usually suggest people to go to the Nielsen Norman Group. I find that their information is very usable. So I suggest that. And also contrast checkers, tools that help you view if your WordPress site is accessible or not. These are always a win-win. You can always reach out to me, contact me. I am passionate about this. I love it. And I am very lucky that I get to do what I love. So my LinkedIn, you can find me as M.A. Gabriela G. And there's my email as well, M.A. Gabriela with only one L, M.A. Gabriela G @me.com. This has been great. Thank you very much to everyone that made it possible. And I don't know if we have any questions.
Thank you, Gabby, for that masterclass in usability testing. It is now time for the audience Q&A. If you haven't had the chance to put your question, you are welcome to add that into the Q&A section. And I am going to go ahead and just ask the first question.
Yes.
So, yeah, during the planning period, you spoke about choosing the most important scenarios on a site. Could you speak more about how to do this?
Absolutely. Let's say that you have a system where you have to log in, and the most important thing that you have to do is to print reports, right? But you also can personalize the experience of your user, change your username, and all of these things related to administration. In that case, I would first of all test that the participant, the user, the people can actually find reports and print reports. And if to do that, I have to myself, previous to the start of the test, log in and do some things, in the administrative tasks, I would do that so that it is okay to start from a point of a particular task so that we make sure that we test what is the most important thing. And then we go with the fewer priorities.
Wonderful. Thank you. Another question that Anonymous submitted is, you talked about the report on a slide. Where or what is this?
Yes, the report is that this is a test where you will learn many things, right? So the report is the summary of what you did. I wanted to have this goal. I wanted to learn this. I selected these participants. This is the characteristics of my participants. This is the task, the scenarios that I wanted to test. This was my environment. These are the metrics. You list everything of the test. And then this is what I learned. These are my findings. I decided to prioritize it this way. And these are the things that I will fix first. So it's like a summary of what you did. It's like taking a picture of all the effort that you're doing so that you first have it, right? We cannot measure what we don't have. We cannot improve what we don't measure. So you will have it there. Also, you can use it as a communication tool within your team, your organization, because these are facts. It's not that I think that maybe this is not accessible. I know for a fact because 70% of the participants couldn't complete this task. And then it's also a picture for you to compare. You go, you improve what you have to improve, you do more testing, and you compare the first version versus the second version. So the report is to take a picture in the form of a report, a presentation. The common industry format, if you Google that, of usability testing, is a great way to do it.
Thank you. Another question, moving along, is it a good idea to ask at the end of the engagement how you did as a tester and what feedback might be, or is that not professional? It would help testers become more competent and provide more value to the clients.
It's perfectly good. I suggest you do it on a survey. You can do it on a paper survey, on an accessible link for the participants. You can, if you have help, depending on your team or a friend of yours, you can have another station with a device ready to take that final thoughts, just to prevent the participants to feel, maybe you were talking too fast and they want to say that, but they don't want to make you feel sad, because I have known that participants are so great that they have you in their minds. So just make sure that it's something that is anonymous. Some people will do it because they want, but it's not unprofessional in my opinion. I would always request also feedback of me as a facilitator.
Great question. Do you think in-house testing, meaning with your own team or the client, is better than no testing when you might not have access to or the resources / budget for outside testers?
Definitely. I say this, if you have a roommate, if you live with your parent, if you have a neighbor, even that is better than nothing. Within the organization, of course, I suggest that's the first thing that we actually do in the team, in my team, is to test inside, because there are things that are not usable and are so big, are these big issues that you want to make sure that you cover that with friends, let's say with friends and family, meaning the organization, your teammates, people in the organization that is not involved in that product or project. So definitely, and then with that, you will find the biggest errors that you have. And when you have the time and the budget, or you find to make a connection or something, you can test for accessibility in depth or usability, but things that that are not really bad because you already tested. Always test. That's the summary. Always test.
It's a great takeaway. Another question from Ron. Do you try to verify the voluntary product accessibility template information from vendors from usability testing perspective? And if so, do you find that VPATs are usually reliable?
In my experience, VPATs are reliable. And it depends, this depends on the organization that you hire or you're working with to do so. I have worked with organizations because, it's a very good way to have a third party, somebody that is not involved to do these reviews. So when we compare this with our own things, of course, we learn things from other perspectives. Tests will always give you learnings. But in my personal opinion, these are very reliable. Of course, we do research about who will do this, right? So that's important. I'm not listening. Okay.
Another question from Ron. When doing usability testing, what's the smallest number of testers you feel provides a good range of feedback to catch the majority of challenges on a website?
That is a great question, and thank you. There is a theory that is presented in a mathematical way. I am not an expert on that, so I will not dive into that. But the thing is that if you test with 5 people, and this model I can share on the chat later, if you test with 5 people, you will find most of your problems. So what happens if you test with the first one, you find problems. You test with the second participant, you find those problems and a little bit more. You try with the third one and you find what you already found. So by the number 5, you pretty much found everything on that iteration. If you're testing for performance, for usability in a performance environment, or if you want to make sure that you find trends or stuff like that, go with bigger amounts. But because this is meant to be a starter for you, to inspire you, 5 people. But again, 1 is more than 0 is better. But 5 is the answer.
That sounds really doable. Another question is, how do you make sure your test is flexible for people of all abilities, your questions and the tasks, including screen reader, tabbing versus scrolling through the site?
Yes. You don't know if your site is accessible, right? So you want to find that out. If you follow the guidelines, if you research about it, you will know what not to do from the start. But in order to how to make the questions and how to perform the test, my suggestion is to find somebody from the community of accessibility or a person with disability and ask them. For me, I have to share, or I want to share, sometimes I didn't know, and I still don't know how to say certain things, how to express in some environments. And I always ask, because it's the honest thing to do. I apologize. I don't know. I want to learn. Please help me. And I guarantee somebody will support you. So if you go to the community again, and this is why it's so important to the inclusive collaboration, people will help you and guide you with that. There are some websites that have suggestions on what to do, what not to do. Perkins, the School for the Blind, and Perkins Access, I can say that they have a pretty good set of guidelines on how to do this type of exercises. So maybe you can also check that out.
Great resource. A question from Christine. Could you provide some examples of where the WCAG falls short?
I think there are some, in my opinion, in my experience, there are some guidelines that are complex for me. I don't know if it is my English or, I don't know, but there are some guidelines that, since I don't really understand, I don't know how to apply. I don't know how to build it. So I maybe don't have right now an example that comes to mind, but for sure what I have experienced is I don't know how that translates into something. So I either test to double check and make sure, or ask the community or my coworkers or somebody that maybe in a more technical way understands the guidelines. But my biggest example is the real life that I presented, where sometimes you follow guidelines and they are great. They are just not out there in the real world. But I'll find an example. That's a good one for the future.
Wonderful. We have 2 more questions and then we'll wrap up. So we have a question from John. Don't you think having a better and cleaner code from the foundation of your project helps you build a better and lesser susceptible to testing for better reliability?
100%. Building accessible sites, when you follow the guidelines, by default, immediately your code is better, 100%. So my suggestion to developers all the time is, this is good for everyone. Accessibility is an umbrella that covers everyone.
Absolutely. One last question from Luna. Do you have any additional resources for introducing accessibility testing requirements to an organization?
I can share, of course. I can share if you're on Slack or later in this chat, I can share. Again, Nielsen Norman Group, they have like a set of usability testing 101, why to do usability test, listing some facts. And regarding to the process, I think this is one of the things that you make your own recipe. If you learn and find answers and it's working for you, that is perfect. You don't have to follow any other things that don't make sense for your reality, right? I find that when we have these situations where we get too strict with the steps and with the requirements and with the things, people lose interest, right? Because it's too hard. I don't have this, I don't have that, I cannot record, so I won't do it. No, always do it. And you'll grow, and in this journey, you will find things that work better for you. But I would go to Nielsen Norman Group for starters, and that would be good. They have good information about it.
Great. That concludes the Q&A part. Thank you, everyone, for attending the session with Gabby Gandica. You can continue this conversation in the chat or on social media using the hashtag WPA11Y Day and hashtag WPAD2023. We also appreciate it if you go to 2023.wpaccessibility.day/feedback to provide anonymous feedback for our speakers on their presentation and can enter to win a t-shirt while you're there. Stay tuned for the next talk, complex data visualizations and the accessibility phenomena with Mary Alvarado at 18 UTC. And while you're waiting, don't forget to visit our sponsors pages to grab some virtual swag and enter for a chance to win great prizes. See you right after the break.
Thank you to WordPress Accessibility Day 2023 sponsors. Platinum sponsor, Equalize Digital. Equalize Digital's Accessibility Checker plugin is an automated accessibility scanning tool that helps WordPress websites become and stay accessible. Platinum sponsor, Gravity Forms. Gravity Forms is the professional form builder that you need to create beautiful, powerful, and accessible forms. Gold sponsors, 20i, DQ, Empire Caption Solutions, Pressable, and WP Engine. Silver sponsors, CodeGeek, Drake Cooper, GoDaddy, Lone Rock Point, NerdPress, Overnight Website by Kinetic Iris, Riola Networks, A11Y Collective, and The Blogsmith. Bronze sponsors, Accessicart, Green Geeks Web Hosting, Hall Analysis SEO Consulting, HDC, ITX, IvyCat, MetaBox, Pixel Chefs, Simply Schedule Appointments, SiteGround, Termageddon, Underrepresented in Tech, Weglot, and Yoast.